She accepted the human for peace, then watched him become a one-man war. The throne room of the Valanthi Empire was a masterpiece of light and glass. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves, and the floor was polished so perfectly that visitors could see their own reflections staring back at them. Everything about this place spoke of power, elegance, and centuries of civilization. Empress Sirathen sat upon her throne, her silver skin glowing softly in the starlight. Her 4 eyes watched the doors at the far end of the hall with careful attention. Today was an important day. Today, the humans were sending their gift. She had heard many things about humans. They were a young species, barely 1,000 years into space travel. They were small, fragile, and lived such short lives that most Valanthi found it difficult to take them seriously. And yet, these same weak creatures had fought her empire to a standstill during the border wars. The Valanthi had expected an easy victory. They had received something else entirely. Now, after 3 years of bloody conflict, both sides had agreed to peace. The Galactic Concord had demanded it. And as part of this peace, the humans had offered to send a representative to live among the Valanthi, a symbol of trust and cooperation. Sirathen had accepted. She was curious about these strange beings who refused to surrender even when logic demanded it. The great doors opened, and her guards announced the arrival. The human representative, Marcus Cole, requests audience with Her Eternal Majesty. A single figure walked into the throne room. Sirathen studied him carefully. He was tall for a human, with broad shoulders and a face that seemed carved from stone. His hair was dark, cut short in a military style. He wore simple diplomatic clothing, black and gray, no decorations, no medals. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. They were brown, like earth, and they held a quietness that surprised her. Most humans she had encountered were loud, emotional, always moving. This one moved like water, smooth, controlled, purposeful. He stopped at the proper distance and bowed exactly as protocol demanded. Not too deep, not too shallow. Someone had trained him well. "Your Majesty," he said. His voice was calm and respectful. "I am honored to stand before you. Earth sends its gratitude for accepting this arrangement." Sirathen tilted her head slightly. "You speak our language adequately, human." "I have studied for 2 years, Your Majesty. I wanted to show proper respect." "Respect." She let the word hang in the air. "An interesting choice, considering our recent disagreements." Something flickered in his eyes, a shadow of old memories. But his expression remained steady. "The war is over, Your Majesty. I am here for peace." She rose from her throne and descended the steps slowly, her long robes trailing behind her like liquid silver. Her guards tensed, but she waved them back. She wanted to see this human up close. Standing before him, she realized he was taller than her by several inches. Most species found the Valanthi intimidating, their silver skin, their 4 eyes, their reputation for cold logic. But Marcus Cole simply stood there, waiting, his breathing calm. "You were a soldier," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Majesty. You fought in the border wars." "Yes, against my people." A pause. "Yes." She circled him slowly, examining him like one might examine a statue. "And now you come to my palace as a diplomat. Do you not find this strange?" "I find it necessary," he replied. The best people to build peace are often those who understand the cost of war. Sirathen stopped in front of him again. There was wisdom in those words, she admitted to herself. Perhaps this human was more interesting than she had expected. "Very well, Marcus Cole. You will be given quarters in the Eastern Wing. My staff will attend to your needs. You will have freedom to move within the palace grounds, but certain areas are restricted. Violate this trust, and our peace will end badly for you. Do you understand?" "Perfectly, Your Majesty." She returned to her throne. "Then welcome to the Valanthi Empire. May your stay be educational." That evening, the palace hosted a welcoming banquet in honor of the new human representative. Nobles from across the empire attended, their silver skin adorned with jewels, and their voices filled with polite conversation. Music played softly, and servants moved through the crowd with trays of exotic foods. Marcus stood near one of the great windows, holding a glass of something purple that he had not yet tasted. He smiled when spoken to, answered questions with diplomatic grace, and thanked everyone for their hospitality. But his eyes never stopped moving. He watched the nobles carefully, their gestures, their expressions, the way they glanced at each other when they thought no one was looking. He noticed Lord Verath, a military commander, whispering urgently to a hooded figure in the corner. He saw Lady Mirath's smile falter for just a moment when she mentioned the trade routes near the outer sectors. Something was wrong. The words said one thing. The faces said another. Marcus had survived 15 years in special operations by learning to read people. And right now, this room was screaming warnings that only he could hear. He said nothing. He simply smiled, nodded, and committed every detail to memory. Later that night, after the banquet ended and the palace grew quiet, Marcus sat alone in his quarters. The lights were off. The only illumination came from the stars outside his window. He did not sleep. Instead, he sat perfectly still, his mind working through everything he had observed. The whispered conversations, the nervous glances, the trade convoy that Lady Mirath had mentioned, the one arriving tomorrow that was not listed on any official schedule he had been shown. Something was coming. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the darkness, lights were moving. Ships, many ships, coming closer. In another room, Cirith received a report from her spy master. The human has not slept, Your Majesty. He sits in darkness, watching the sky. The Empress frowned. Watching for what? Unknown, Majesty, but he seems alert, as if he is waiting for something. Sirathan turned to her window. In the distance, barely visible against the stars, she could see lights approaching, the trade convoy, arriving ahead of schedule. She felt a chill run down her spine. Double the palace guards, she ordered quietly. And keep watching the human. You suspect him of something, Majesty? Sirathan shook her head slowly. No, I suspect he knows something that we do not. And that frightens me more than any threat. Outside, the lights grew closer, and Marcus Cole continued his silent watch, counting ships that should not exist, preparing for a storm that no one else could see. The peace was about to shatter, and only the human was ready. The night exploded without warning. Marcus was still sitting by his window when the first plasma bolt struck the palace shields. The entire building shook, and alarms began screaming through every corridor. Red emergency lights replaced the soft glow of the evening, turning the elegant hallways into something from a nightmare. He was on his feet immediately, his body responding before his mind could even process what was happening. Years of training took over. His heart rate slowed, his senses sharpened. Everything became clear and focused. Through the window, he could see the truth. The trade convoy was no convoy at all. The ships were dropping their disguises, revealing dark hulls covered in weapons. Razith warships. At least 30 of them, surrounding the planet like hungry predators. The Razith Dominion, ancient enemies of the Valanthi, and they had chosen this night, this specific night, to strike. Marcus understood immediately. The Empress was hosting a human representative. The palace was celebrating peace. Security was relaxed. It was the perfect moment for a devastating attack. He moved to the door and opened it carefully. The corridor outside was chaos. Servants ran in every direction, screaming. Guards rushed past, their weapons drawn. No one paid attention to the human standing quietly in his doorway. Another explosion rocked the palace. Closer this time. The shields were failing. Marcus made his decision in less than a second. He turned back into his room and walked to the small case he had brought from Earth. The Valanthi security scanners had examined it thoroughly and found nothing dangerous. They had been looking for weapons. They had not been looking for components. His fingers moved with practiced speed, assembling pieces that looked innocent on their own, but became something else entirely when combined. Within 2 minutes, he held a compact plasma pistol, a tactical blade, and a small device that could hack most electronic systems in the galaxy. He also pulled out a thin black suit, flexible armor that could stop most small arms fire. He put it on under his diplomatic clothing. Earth had not sent just a diplomat. Earth had sent insurance. Marcus stepped into the corridor and began moving toward the throne room. Empress Scirithan stood at the center of chaos, shouting orders to her commanders. Her throne room had become a war room, with holographic displays showing the battle outside. The news was not good. "Shields at 40%, Majesty. Enemy troops have breached the western gate. We cannot reach the orbital defense stations. Communications are jammed." She watched her empire's defenses crumble with cold fury in her 4 eyes. The Razeth had planned this perfectly. They had waited, watched, and struck at the moment of greatest weakness. "Where are the reinforcements?" she demanded. 2 hours away, Majesty, at minimum. 2 hours. The palace would fall in 30 minutes at this rate. The doors burst open, and a squad of her royal guards rushed in. Between them, being escorted firmly, was the human. "We found him in the eastern corridor, Majesty," the guard captain reported, moving toward the throne room. He was carrying these. The captain held up Marcus's weapons, the pistol, and the blade. Scirithan stared at the human, her eyes narrowed. "You brought weapons into my palace." "Hidden weapons." "Yes," Marcus said simply. He did not apologize or explain. "You lied to us." "I kept options open, Your Majesty." "There is a difference." Another explosion shook the room. Dust fell from the ceiling. The holographic display flickered and showed enemy soldiers pouring through the breached gates. Hundreds of them. Thousands. "Your Majesty," the guard captain said urgently, "we must evacuate you to the emergency bunker." "Now?" Scirithan nodded. "Prepare my escort. And remove the human to safety as well. He is still a diplomatic asset. If we survive this, we will need..." "No." Everyone turned to look at Marcus. "I am not leaving," he said. The guard captain stepped forward angrily. "You do not give orders here, human. You will do as Her Majesty commands." Marcus looked past the captain, directly at Scirithan. His brown eyes were calm, but something burned behind them, something old and deep. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "I was not sent here just to shake hands and smile for photographs." She frowned. "Then why were you sent?" "Because Earth remembers." The words hung in the air. Scirithan felt something shift in her understanding. "Remembers what?" she asked. 3 years ago, during the war, the Razeth attacked a human colony on Europa. 10,000 civilians, no military value, just a target to hurt us." Marcus paused. "Your ships were nearby. You had no reason to help us. We were enemies. But your fleet intervened anyway. You saved 4,000 of our people." Scirithan remembered. It had been a strategic decision at the time. Weakening the Razeth served Valanthi interests. Nothing more. But apparently, the humans saw it differently. "Earth does not forget kindness," Marcus continued, "and we do not abandon those who showed us mercy. I volunteered for this mission because I wanted to repay that debt. Tonight, I intend to do exactly that." He held out his hand toward the guard captain. "My weapons, please." The captain looked at the Empress, uncertain. Scirithan studied the human for a long moment. Outside, the battle raged. Her guards were dying. Her palace was burning. And this small, fragile creature was asking for permission to fight. "You are one man," she said softly. "They are thousands." Marcus smiled. It was not a diplomatic smile. It was something else entirely, something that made even the Valanthi guards step back slightly. "Your Majesty," he said, "where I come from, those are called acceptable odds." Scirithan made her decision. "Give him his weapons," she ordered. The captain hesitated, then obeyed. Marcus took the pistol and blade, checking them quickly with movements that spoke of long familiarity. "Stay behind me," he said to the Empress, "and tell your guards to not shoot the human." "What are you going to do?" she asked. Marcus walked toward the throne room doors. Beyond them, the sounds of battle were growing closer. Screams, explosions, the heavy footsteps of Razeth's soldiers. He stopped at the doors and looked back at her one final time. "What humans have always done, Your Majesty. Survive, adapt, and make our enemies regret ever threatening those we protect." He pushed the doors open. The first Razeth soldier appeared in the corridor, raising his weapon. Marcus moved like lightning, faster than Sarathan had ever seen any creature move. The soldier fell before he could fire a single shot. Then the second fell, and the third. And Empress Sarathan watched in stunned silence as the human she had accepted for peace became something else entirely. Something terrifying, something beautiful. A one-man war had begun. The first Razith squad entered the corridor with confidence. They were elite soldiers, trained for exactly this kind of assault. They had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated countless enemies. They feared nothing. They died in 4 seconds. Marcus moved through them like smoke through fingers. His plasma pistol fired twice, dropping the front 2 soldiers. Before their bodies hit the ground, he was already among the others. His blade flashed once, twice, 3 times. Clean cuts, precise movements. No wasted energy. The last soldier tried to call for help. Marcus silenced him before he could speak. Then there was only silence. Behind him, Empress Sarathan stood frozen. Her guards surrounded her, their weapons raised, but they had nothing to shoot at. The battle was already over. "Move," Marcus said quietly. "More are coming." He was right. Heavy footsteps echoed from deeper in the palace. The Razith had heard the commotion. They were sending reinforcements. Marcus led the way, moving through the corridors with a certainty that surprised Sarathan. He had been in the palace for only 1 day. How did he know the layout so well? "You memorized the building," she realized aloud. "Standard procedure," he replied without looking back. "Always know your exits." They turned a corner and nearly walked into another Razith patrol. 6 soldiers, heavily armed, blocking the corridor. The Razith commander saw them and grinned. The Empress herself. "Our masters will reward us greatly for..." He never finished the sentence. Marcus threw his blade with perfect accuracy. It buried itself in the commander's throat. Before the other soldiers could react, Marcus was already moving. He grabbed the fallen commander's rifle and used it as both weapon and shield, blocking incoming fire while returning shots of his own. 3 soldiers fell in rapid succession. The 4th tried to retreat and took a plasma bolt in the back. The 5th raised his hands in surrender. Marcus did not accept surrenders. Not tonight. When it was over, he retrieved his blade and wiped it clean. His breathing was slightly heavier now, but his hands were steady. "This way," he said, pointing toward a service corridor. "The main halls will be flooded with enemies. We need to move through the servant passages." They traveled through the hidden parts of the palace, narrow corridors meant for staff, maintenance tunnels that connected different wings, forgotten rooms that had not been used in centuries. Marcus seemed to know them all. Sarathan watched him carefully as they moved. This human was nothing like what she had expected. His file had described him as a diplomat, a former soldier who had chosen peace over war. It had mentioned his service record, but the details had been classified. Now she understood why. This was not a man who had simply served in the military. This was something else entirely. A specialist. A weapon shaped like a person. "How many have you killed?" she asked suddenly. Marcus did not slow down. "Tonight, or in total?" "In total." A pause. "I stopped counting years ago, Your Majesty. It was not good for my sleep." They emerged into a larger corridor, and Marcus held up his hand, signaling them to stop. Voices echoed from ahead. Razith soldiers, many of them. 30 at least, one of Sarathan's guards whispered after listening carefully. "We cannot fight through that many." Marcus studied the corridor. His eyes moved across the walls, the ceiling, the floor. He was calculating something. "That balcony," he said, pointing to a decorative structure above them. "Is it weight-bearing?" The guard frowned. "It is decorative. It holds nothing." Desensitization. Exactly. Marcus raised his plasma pistol and fired 3 precise shots at the supports holding the balcony in place. The structure groaned, but did not fall. "What are you doing?" Sarathan demanded. "Creating options," Marcus replied. He turned to the guards. "When I give the signal, you take the Empress through that door on the left. It leads to the eastern stairwell. Go down 2 floors and wait for me." "And what will you be doing?" Marcus smiled that strange, unsettling smile again. "Making noise." Before anyone could argue, he stepped out into the open corridor and shouted at the Razeth soldiers in their own language. Scifi did not speak Razeth, but she recognized insults when she heard them. Marcus was questioning their courage, their honor, their ancestry. He was calling them cowards. He was daring them to come and face him. The Razeth soldiers turned, fury in their eyes. They charged toward the lone human who had dared to mock them. Marcus waited until they were directly beneath the damaged balcony. Then he fired one more shot. The balcony collapsed with a thunderous crash, burying half the soldiers under tons of crystal and stone. The survivors stumbled, confused, choking on dust. Marcus was among them before they could recover. "Now!" he shouted. "Go!" Scirithen's guards grabbed her arms and pulled her toward the side door. She wanted to stay, wanted to watch, but they would not let her. The last thing she saw before the door closed was Marcus Cole fighting alone against a dozen Razeth soldiers. He was not losing. They waited in the stairwell for 7 minutes. It felt like 7 hours. Scirithen's guards were nervous. They kept looking at the door, expecting Razeth soldiers to burst through at any moment. Instead, there was only silence. Then footsteps. Single footsteps. Coming down the stairs, the guards raised their weapons. Marcus appeared around the corner. His diplomatic clothing was torn. There was blood on his face, not his own. His breathing was heavy now, and she could see exhaustion starting to creep into his movements. But he was alive. 37, he said. "What?" Saraten asked. "You asked how many I had killed tonight. The answer is now 37. He leaned against the wall for a moment, catching his breath. "We need to keep moving. The Razeth commander knows someone is hunting his troops. He will send everyone he has." "Hunting," one of the guards repeated. "You speak as if you are the predator here." Marcus looked at him with those calm brown eyes. "I am, soldier. Humans learned long ago that the best defense is to make your enemies afraid. Tonight, I'm going to teach the Razeth what fear feels like." He pushed himself off the wall and started moving again. "The Great Hall," he said. "That is where they will try to establish their command center. If we can reach it first, we can hold them off until reinforcements arrive." "That is impossible," the guard captain said. "There are hundreds of them between us and the Great Hall." Marcus did not stop walking. "Then, I will need more ammunition," he said simply. Sarafen followed him, her mind struggling to process what she was witnessing. She had accepted this human for peace. She had expected quiet diplomacy and careful negotiations. Instead, she had received a demon wearing a diplomat's face, and somehow, impossibly, she was beginning to feel something she had not felt in years. Hope. The Great Hall was the heart of the Valanthi Palace. It was a massive chamber with ceilings that stretched toward the stars and walls covered in ancient artwork depicting centuries of history. Crystal chandeliers hung from above, casting rainbow light across marble floors. Tonight, it would become a battlefield. Marcus led them through the back passages, avoiding Razeth patrols with an instinct that seemed almost supernatural. Twice, they nearly walked into enemy soldiers. Twice, Marcus handled the situation before anyone else could react. The bodies were left behind. There was no time for anything else. When they finally reached the service entrance to the Great Hall, Marcus held up his hand for silence. He pressed his ear against the door and listened carefully. 12 inside, he whispered, setting up communication equipment. "They are trying to establish a command post. Can we go around?" Scifi asked. "No. This is the only defensible position in this wing. If they control the Great Hall, they control all movement through the palace." Marcus checked his weapons. His plasma pistol was running low on charge. His blade was still sharp, still ready. "We take this room," he continued. "Then we hold it until your reinforcements arrive." The guard captain shook his head. "My Empress, this is madness. We are 7 against their entire army. Even if we take the hall, they will simply overwhelm us with numbers." "Perhaps," Marcus agreed. "But every minute we hold is a minute closer to rescue, and I have held worse positions with less support." He looked at Scirithen directly. "Your Majesty, I need your permission. Once we begin, there is no going back. The Empress studied his face. She saw exhaustion there, and pain, and something else, a burning determination that refused to die. This human had already done more for her empire in one night than many of her own nobles had done in their entire lives. "You have my permission," she said quietly, "and my gratitude." Marcus nodded once. Then he turned to the guards. "Stay with the Empress. Protect her at all costs. I will clear the room." "Alone?" the captain asked in disbelief. "It is easier when I do not have to worry about friendly fire." Before anyone could argue, Marcus opened the door and stepped through. The 12 Razeth soldiers inside the Great Hall never had a chance. Marcus moved, like water, like wind, like something that could not be stopped. He used the massive pillars for cover, the furniture as obstacles, the very architecture of the room as his weapon. He attacked from angles they did not expect, struck at moments they could not predict. The first 3 fell before they knew they were under attack. The next 4 died trying to form a defensive line. The remaining 5 managed to return fire, filling the air with plasma bolts that scorched the ancient walls. None of them hit their target. Marcus finished the last soldier with his blade, then signaled for the others to enter. Cyrathan walked into the great hall and looked around at the destruction. Scorch marks covered the floor. Bodies lay where they had fallen. The beautiful room had become a tomb. "Secure the entrances," Marcus ordered the guards. "Use the furniture to build barriers. We need to hold 3 doorways." The guards moved to obey. They no longer questioned the human's authority. They had seen what he could do. Marcus walked to the communication equipment the Razeth had been setting up. His fingers moved across the controls, and his eyes narrowed in concentration. "What are you doing?" Cirathan asked. "Sending a message. The Razeth are jamming long-range communications, but short-range still works. If I can boost the signal?" He made a final adjustment and smiled grimly. "There, your reinforcements will know exactly where we are. They can coordinate their assault when they arrive." "How long until they reach us?" "Based on your commander's estimate, 90 minutes. 90 minutes. An eternity in battle. Can we hold that long?" she asked. Marcus did not answer. He did not need to. They both knew the truth. The first wave came 15 minutes later. 50 Razeth soldiers stormed the main entrance, expecting easy victory. They found barriers made of heavy furniture and determined defenders waiting behind them. Plasma fire filled the air, turning the great hall into a storm of light and heat. Marcus was everywhere at once. He appeared at one barrier to stop a breach, then vanished to another to reinforce failing defenses. He shouted orders to the guards, adjusting their positions, coordinating their fire. He fought like 10 men, making up for their small numbers through sheer skill and determination. But even demons have limits. The second wave came with 100 soldiers. They pushed harder, fighting with the fury of warriors who knew they outnumbered their enemy. They did not care about losses. They cared only about victory. A plasma bolt struck Marcus in the shoulder. He stumbled but did not fall. He switched his pistol to his other hand and kept firing. Blood soaked through his torn clothing, but he ignored it. Another bolt grazed his skull, leaving a burning line across his head. The world spun for a moment, but he forced himself to focus. Pain was just information. It could be dealt with later. If there was a later. The Razeth breached the eastern barrier. 3 guards fell defending it. Marcus rushed to fill the gap, fighting hand to hand when his pistol finally died. His blade sang through the air, cutting down enemies with desperate precision. Then, the blade caught on armor, and a Razeth soldier saw his opportunity. The enemy's weapon pierced Marcus's side. Cold fire exploded through his body. He gasped, feeling something vital tear inside him. But even as he fell to one knee, his hands found the soldier's throat. He twisted once, hard, and the Razeth dropped. 2 more enemies rushed toward him. Marcus killed them both with their fallen companion's weapon. Then his legs gave out completely. Cirathan saw him fall. "Marcus!" she screamed. She ran toward him, ignoring the cries of her guards. Plasma bolts flew past her head, but she did not care. She reached the human and pulled him behind cover, her silver hands staining with his red blood. He looked up at her with those calm brown eyes. Even now, even bleeding on her floor, he seemed at peace. "Your Majesty," he said weakly, "you should not be here. Go to the bunker. I will not leave you. You must." He coughed, and blood appeared on his lips. "Reinforcements, 70 minutes still. I cannot hold that long, but I can buy you time. Get your people to safety." Tears formed in Sirathan's 4 eyes. She had known this human for only 1 day, but she felt as if she was watching a friend die. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do this for us? We were enemies." Marcus smiled. It was a peaceful smile, full of acceptance. "Because that is what humans do, Your Majesty. We protect those who cannot protect themselves, even when it costs us everything." He pushed himself up, using his blade as a crutch. His body screamed in protest, but he forced it to obey. "Go," he said. "Remember us kindly." He turned toward the corridor filling with fresh Razeth soldiers. Behind her, Sirathan heard him begin to hum, a strange melody, something ancient and sad. Her guards pulled her away as the final battle began. The last thing she saw was Marcus Cole standing alone against an army, broken but undefeated, buying time with the only currency he had left: his life. 3 hours felt like 3 centuries. Empress Sirathan sat in the emergency bunker beneath her palace, surrounded by guards and advisors, listening to the battle rage above her head. Every explosion made her flinch. Every scream made her wonder if it belonged to the human who had sacrificed everything for her survival. The communications equipment crackled with updates. The Razeth were everywhere. The palace defenses had fallen completely. Only scattered pockets of resistance remained. And then, finally, the message she had been waiting for. "Your Majesty. The combined fleet has broken through the blockade. Human Rapid Response Squadron and Valanthi Defense Forces are entering atmosphere now." Syra then closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to gods she had stopped believing in long ago. "How long until ground forces arrive?" she demanded. 20 minutes, Majesty. They are coming as fast as possible." 20 minutes. She wondered if there was anything left to save. The rescue came with fire and thunder. Human dropships descended from the sky like angry birds, their weapons blazing. The Valanthi assault craft followed close behind, working in perfect coordination with their new allies. The Razeth, caught between the hammer above and the survivors below, began to crumble. Sirathan emerged from the bunker the moment her guards declared it safe. She did not wait for proper escort. She did not follow protocol. She ran through the ruined corridors of her palace, stepping over bodies and debris, searching for one specific place: the Great Hall. When she arrived, she stopped breathing. The room was destroyed. Scorch marks covered every surface. Crystal chandeliers lay shattered on the floor. The ancient artwork was burned beyond recognition. Bodies were everywhere, dozens of them, hundreds of them, piled in grotesque formations around the barriers. And at the center of it all, slumped against a pillar, sat Marcus Cole. He was surrounded by fallen enemies. 47 Razeth soldiers lay dead within arm's reach of his position. 3 broken blades rested beside him, weapons he had taken from enemies and used until they shattered. His clothing was more blood than fabric. His face was pale as moonlight, but his chest was moving. "He is alive!" Syra then shouted. "Medical teams!" Now, the human is alive. The next weeks passed in a blur of activity. Human medical teams arrived with technology the Valanthi had never seen before. Tiny machines called nanites that could repair damaged tissue from the inside. Synthetic blood that could replace what was lost. Neural regenerators that could heal injuries to the brain and spine. They worked on Marcus for 18 hours straight. 3 times his heart stopped. 3 times they brought him back. "He is one of ours," the human admiral explained to Sirathan when she asked why they fought so hard to save one man. "We do not leave our people behind, ever." She sat by his bed every day, watching the machines breathe for him, watching the monitors track his slow recovery. Her advisors told her it was inappropriate. An empress should not spend her time caring for a foreign soldier. She ignored them. On the 12th day, Marcus opened his eyes. Your Majesty. His voice was weak, barely a whisper, but it was the most beautiful sound Scifi had heard in her entire life. You survived, she said softly. Apparently. He tried to smile, but it turned into a wince of pain. How long? 12 days. Your doctors say it is a miracle you are breathing. Marcus looked down at his body, wrapped in bandages and connected to dozens of machines. Humans are difficult to kill. We have had practice. Scifi laughed despite herself. It was the first time she had laughed since the attack. I have questions, she said after a moment. I may have answers. How did you do it? One man against an army. My analyst counted the bodies. You killed over 100 soldiers in the Great Hall alone. How is that possible? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was distant, as if he was remembering something from long ago. Your Majesty, humans are not strong. We are not fast. We do not have claws or armor or venom. For most of our history, we were prey. Every creature on our world could kill us easily. He paused, gathering strength, but we never accepted it. We learned to fight back. We made weapons from stones and sticks. We used fire to hold back the darkness. We studied our enemies and found their weaknesses. Generation after generation, we became better at one thing: survival. He looked at her with those brown eyes, calm and ancient. What you saw was not special, Your Majesty. It was simply what humans do when someone threatens those we care about. We become something else, something that does not stop until the threat is ended or we are dead. Scifi considered his words carefully. She had studied human history before his arrival. She knew about their wars, their conflicts, their endless capacity for violence. But she had always viewed it as barbarism, as the fumbling of a primitive species. Now she understood differently. It was not barbarism. It was evolution. Humans had turned their weakness into strength, their fear into fury. They had become the thing that monsters feared. I underestimated your species, she admitted. Most do, Marcus replied, usually only once. 1 month later, the peace treaty between the Valanthi Empire and Earth was rewritten. It was no longer an arrangement of convenience, a political necessity forced by circumstances. It became a true alliance, sealed in blood and fire and sacrifice. The Valanthi pledged eternal friendship with humanity. Humanity pledged the same in return. The Razeth Dominion received a formal declaration from both empires. It was not a declaration of war. It was something worse. A promise. Any future attack would be met with overwhelming force from both species working together. The Razeth leaders read the declaration and quietly canceled all planned military operations. They had seen what one human could do. They did not want to discover what billions could accomplish. The ceremony was held in the rebuilt Great Hall. Empress Scifi stood before her entire court, dressed in her finest robes, holding the highest military honor the Valanthi Empire could bestow. It had never been given to a non-Valanthi in the 1,000-year history of her civilization. Marcus Cole stood before her, finely healed, wearing his simple diplomatic clothing. He looked uncomfortable with all the attention, but he stood straight and tall. Marcus Cole of Earth, Scifi announced, her voice carrying through the silent hall. You came to us as a stranger and became our savior. You risked everything for a people who were once your enemies. You taught us the true meaning of courage, sacrifice, and loyalty. She placed the medallion around his neck, a crystal star that glowed with inner light. From this day forward, she continued, you are a hero of the Valanthi Empire. Your name will be remembered for as long as our civilization exists. The court erupted in applause. Marcus bowed his head respectfully, saying nothing. But as Scifi leaned close to secure the medallion, she whispered words meant only for him. I accepted you for peace. I did not expect a one-man war. Marcus looked up at her, and for the first time since she had known him, he truly smiled. Your Majesty, he whispered back, humans do not start wars, but we are very good at finishing them. Far across the galaxy, intelligence officers from a dozen different species watched the ceremony broadcast. They studied the human, called Marcus Cole. They reviewed the reports from the palace battle. They calculated and analyzed and debated. And then, one by one, they quietly updated their threat assessments. Humanity was no longer classified as a minor species, a young civilization still finding its place in the galaxy. They were reclassified as something else entirely, a species to never, ever threaten. Because if this was what one human could do, imagine what all of them could accomplish together. The stars suddenly felt much smaller and much more dangerous. The end.